Timing, as they say, is everything in life. And so too is it in sports. What if I were to tell you Jason Kidd had more points, rebounds, and assists in his NBA career than Magic Johnson? That Elvin Hayes has more total points and rebounds for his career and a higher average per game in both categories than Tim Duncan? And did you know that Drew Brees led the league in passing yards a record 7 times in his career? Or that Peyton Manning had 7 first-team All-Pro selections, more than Tom Brady and Joe Montana combined?
See, nobody cares.
But when the chips were in the center of the table and the lights were at their brightest, we knew who the peak performers were. And that is what has always driven the conversations of who the greatest players were. But that conversation, as it pertains to the NBA's GOAT, has shifted for whatever reason in recent years to LeBron James and Michael Jordan. As the ratings pigs at various cash cow major media outlets continue to fuel their obedient Gen Z flock who eat it all up and pledge their allegiance to the self-proclaimed GOAT.
That one right there made me the greatest player of all time.
But a primary point of contention inevitably are the failures LeBron James has incurred throughout his playoff career, winning just 4 titles in 20 full and relatively healthy seasons, while the counterpoint in recent years has become the tried and trusted plumber defense.
Oh, well, you know, he was being guarded by plumbers and firemen.
To call out the perceived lack of competition Jordan faced along his way to a sterling 6-0 record in the NBA Finals in what amounted to only 12 full seasons. But as with most things in sports, to reveal the truth will require us to dig into the context of their runs, both the competition faced as well as the supporting casts they had around them. And in his first title run by Michael Jordan's Bulls in the 1990-91 season, his playoffs began sweeping the New York Knicks, who were only 39-43 for the season. But to be fair, LeBron's final runs in 2007, 2011, 2013, and 2015 all featured playoff opponents without a winning record. Next up were the 44-38 Philadelphia 76ers before reaching the 50-win Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals, who had just been to 3 consecutive NBA Finals and won the last 2 straight titles. Of course, the Bulls would sweep them en route to Jordan's first Finals appearance, where he would meet the 58-win Lakers, who, yes, no longer had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but they did have 31-year-old Magic Johnson, who finished that season second in league MVP voting, as well as 29-year-old Hall of Famer James Worthy, who along with Magic made that year's All-Star game. Who did not make the All-Star team that year was Scottie Pippen, or any other Jordan teammate on the Chicago Bulls that season. But no problem for Mike, as he would beat the Lakers 4-1 in the finals while easily being named Finals MVP, as he led the team in points, assists, steals, and blocks, averaging 31.5 points, 11.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds, nearly 3 steals, and 1.5 blocks per game on 56% shooting. The Bulls were 15-2 during that postseason run, while Jordan would beat Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman, Magic Johnson, and James Worthy throughout the playoffs. 7 top 75 players who are all in the Hall of Fame. And this playoff run is typically referred to as one of Jordan's bad or easy runs. In all, Jordan played 16 50-plus win teams of the 24 opponents he faced during his 6 finals runs. Thus, 66% of his competition across all playoff fields were a 50-win team. Comparing that to LeBron, who in 4 title runs faced just 7 50-win teams, or in shortened seasons, a team that had a winning percentage, which would have paced out to 50 wins over a full 82-game year. That's 7 of his 16 total opponents. So while Jordan played a 50-plus win opponent 66% of the time during his title runs, LeBron only played a 50-win opponent 44% of the time in his championship runs. But I know. The reason LeBron didn't win many more titles is just because he played such drastically more difficult competition than Jordan. And since the LeBron fan base likes to talk up his 10 finals appearances, let's expand our examination to all 10 of those playoff runs. Surely, LeBron faced a much higher percentage of elite opponents under these parameters. Of the 40 opponents LeBron faced across all playoff rounds in getting to 10 NBA Finals, 23 of those teams won at least 50 games, which is good for about 58% of his opponents. Still less than the 66% of the time Jordan faced a 50-win team. Oh, but LeBron played a way higher level of opponents. Of the 40 playoff opponents LeBron faced in his 10 finals runs, 6 of them won 60 games or more, which is 15% of the time. Jordan, however, played 7 60-plus win teams of his 24 opponents, roughly 29% of the time, or nearly twice as much of the time as LeBron. Any way you slice it, Jordan played better teams than LeBron James more of the time, much more during his playoff runs. But who faced the better players? This is a tricky question and impossible to answer in terms of Hall of Fame players, as many of LeBron's opponents are still active. As for instance, he played Kevin Durant and Steph Curry many times in the postseason, but they aren't technically in the Hall of Fame at this moment. Also, how many Hall of Famers someone faced doesn't necessarily indicate how good that player is the season they faced them. For example, Gary Payton was a perennial All-Star, was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and named one of the 75 greatest players in NBA history. He eventually won a championship in 2007 as a member of the Miami Heat, but Payton barely played on that team and averaged only 5 points per game, a far cry from his prime. The fairest way to review this is by looking at the All-NBA players each player faced for each playoff run. There are 3 All-NBA teams selected every year and only 15 total players selected league-wide. This will show elite players faced every year. In LeBron's 10 finals appearances, he faced a total of 36 players during those runs that made an All-NBA team, nearly an average of 1 player per the 40 series he played in. Jordan, on the other hand, played 23 All-NBA team selected players during his 6 title runs, also nearly an average of 1 player per the 24 series he played in during that time. By percentage though, Jordan actually played a slightly higher amount of All-NBA players en route to his 6 finals appearances than LeBron did in his 10. So Jordan played better teams with better players and actually won more titles in far less time. But surely that is only because Jordan played on so much better teams. Actually, this one isn't even close. LeBron James played with an All-Star 13 times during the 10 years he made a finals appearance. This includes some combination of Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and Anthony Davis. Jordan, meanwhile, played with an All-Star only 4 times during his 6 title runs, which was just Scottie Pippen 4 different times. But LeBron had to do so much more than Jordan. LeBron James scored 5,911 of his team's 21,008 points during his 10 finals appearances. This is good for just above 28% of his team's total points scored. Jordan, on the other hand, scored 3,776 of his team's 11,387 total points during his 6 title runs, which is over 33% of his team's scoring. But I know, LeBron is such a great playmaker, such a much better passer than Jordan was, makes his teammates so much better, and gets everyone else involved. So of course, if we were to expand this to include points assisted as well as scored, to determine the overall amount of team offense accounted for, surely LeBron will outproduce Jordan here. While it does narrow the gap in the favor of LeBron, looking at total percentage of offense accounted for and adding in assists, LeBron produced 42.5% of his team's total output, while Jordan produced just over 44%. But Jordan never had to play a team like the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. Firstly, LeBron never beat the Kevin Durant Warriors. James faced them twice in 2017 and 2018, losing 4-1 and 4-0 in those 2 series. The better year of the two for the Warriors was in the 2017 season, when Golden State was 67-15. That year, they had 4 All-Stars in Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson, all 4 of which are presumptive Hall of Famers. The only reason LeBron doesn't have more rings is just because he ran up against them 2 years in a row, and Jordan never saw a team like that. Jordan played the legendary 1980s Boston Celtics in back-to-back seasons during his playoff runs, including one of the greatest teams ever assembled in 1985-86. That Celtics team that year, like the 2017 Warriors, were 67-15. And while they only had 3 All-Stars that specific season in Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, and Kevin McHale, they also had that season's league MVP in Larry Bird, the NBA Sixth Man of the Year winner in Bill Walton, and what would become 5 eventual Hall of Famers. Yeah, Jordan lost to that team in back-to-back seasons, but Jordan also had 0 other All-Stars on his own team, while in 2017, LeBron James had 2 other All-Stars on his. Yeah, so after Jordan lost to that Celtics team back-to-back years, he then lost to the Detroit Pistons for 3 years in a row. A Pistons team that also had 4 Hall of Famers on it, went to 3 straight finals, and won back-to-back titles. Jordan, meanwhile, still 0 All-Stars on all of his teams those seasons. While consensus, perception, and recency bias can always lie, adding in actual context can always reveal the full truth, which is Jordan faced better teams, better players, had weaker supporting casts himself, and he was routinely called upon to do more than LeBron James. Despite these undeniable truths, Jordan still won 2 more championships, and this is all despite playing in over 100 fewer playoff games than LeBron James. Meanwhile, this isn't even factoring in Jordan's collegiate national championship or his undefeated record in international play. While countless ratings hogs masquerading around as basketball analysts, along with teenagers on social media, and even LeBron James himself will no doubt continue to awkwardly and embarrassingly force-feed his name into these alleged debates, no amount of yelling or lies will be able to conceal the fact this isn't a legitimate conversation, and it never was.